Welcome to Escoffier Online. This is Chef Thomas here with a new topic. The topic today is thickening agents. We talk a little bit about what actually really happens chemically, and then also we look at classical thickening agents and some new thickening agents. My main focus today is also on, or one of my focuses is also on gluten-free thickening agents. Which is very common nowadays with a lot of people being a little bit more sensitive to gluten. So to start out, what is actually a thickening agent going to be doing for us? So the thickening agent is here to make a substance changing a liquid to a different viscosity. The viscosity is again, from water, which has a very high viscosity to, let's say, maple syrup, which has a very low viscosity. So basically how stuff moves out of a container or pours out of a container, that's your viscosity. So as high the viscosity is, more fluid, as lower, as more thick it is. So with this viscosity also comes a couple other things in perspective. How do these liquids look like? Are they clear? Are they cloudy? Are they thick and colorful? So there's different thickening agents they play into role to make different sauces and different accompaniments thicker without changing their flavor or their looks a lot. When we look at body and stability and suspension, can you create right now a sauce where you can actually see, let's say, onions or shallots and mushrooms in? I'm pretty sure you can. You can make a demi-glace and you can add these items to it, and you maybe call it a chasseur sauce. You have tomatoes in there and parsley, so you can see these things. But what is if you puree something? What is if you thicken it with a roux, which is equal parts fat and flour cooked together? Now it looks completely different because that flour makes it cloudy and you can't see the ingredients anymore. What is if you reduce something? When you take stock and you reduce it tremendously, maybe by 75%, the color gets denser and denser, and it gets darker and darker, and all of a sudden clarity is not really a problem anymore because you can't see through the stock anyways anymore. So these are the things you want to think about when you choose a thickening agent for your dishes. When you make marmalade, when you make jams, there is a particular thickening agent which is preferred than others because it is less likely to help spoil your food. It is also stable against acidity, which you need in there to keep bacterial growth low. So these are the things you want to think about. Body, stability, and suspension in your sauces when you thicken them. In general terms, we have actually only 3 things we can add to a sauce which makes it thicker: starch, protein, and fat. So when we look at the starches, which kind of starches do we have? We have flour, we have vegetable gums, we have pectins. These are actually considered starches, like cornstarch and arrowroot and so forth. These are starches we add to it to fill up with water, with the liquid. They swell and they produce that thickening consistency, the viscosity. Now protein, on the other hand, let's say like eggs, egg yolks, gelatin, and blood albumin, these are a little bit different. They need a lower heat to actually do what they are supposed to do, which is coagulate and bind. So an egg yolk, we usually cook egg yolks, egg whites usually coagulate at a 120, egg yolks about at 140. So if I cook something more than 140, I actually break the egg yolks and the protein, which actually can contain my sauce and make it thicker, and it would be overcooked, it would curl, it would break, and it would not make my sauce thicker. It actually would break apart again and make it liquid again. Then I had actually just like French curled eggs in there. So we have to be very careful about heat. Starches, they need liquid and they need heat. We need to boil these starches to make them thicken. Some higher, some lower, but they need heat. Protein needs lower heat. So gelatin, when you have actually gelatin sheets, which is derived out of usually animal products, joints and so forth. The gelatin sheets you actually steep in warm water, then you wring them out, and then you can dissolve them. You dissolve them in warm water. Doesn't have to boil. They also set after a while again. And gelatin I can actually take and reheat, make it liquid again, and reuse up to 1 time. Some of these thickening agents are better for freezing than others. Arrowroot is perfect for freezing, and it also produces a clear gel, which is nice for presentation. So I can maybe make a speak cups with garnishes in it. I can freeze those, and I can unmold them later when I need them, and they actually hold for 6 months, and they defrost perfectly fine and keep the shape. They're not going to fall apart or are going to be liquid again. Last but not least, we have fats. And the fats, we have butter, oil, and lard. When you think about these substances in your pantry or in your cooler, butter is solid. Lard is a solid, but it's a little bit more soft. It gets soft faster. And oil is actually liquid. So oil, when I put it in the fridge, solidifies. So we have to think about what happens when we add heat or when we take heat away. So if I make a spread for sandwiches and I add butter to it and the butter is liquid and I let that set, then the butter is pliable again. We do this very often with compound butters. Compound butters are solid butter. We soften it up. We add other ingredients to it, maybe herbs, mustards, liquids like lemon juice. That would be kind of like a maitre d' butter. Then we mix that together, we put it in a piping bag so it's soft. We pipe nice rosettes. We put those in the freezer or in the cooler, let them set, and then we can use them solid on a plate for customers for the bread. So we take something solid, soften it up, modify it, pipe it, form it, solidify it again, and then we can use it. So this is kind of like a thickening agent, right? We also use butter then when it's used for sauces like beurre blanc or beurre rouge. We whisk in the butter into a liquid to make it more creamy. The viscosity does not change a whole lot, but it's the mouthfeel because of the fat. The same with oil and with lard. Oil we suspend with a protein when we make mayonnaise. When we make fresh mayonnaise, we have egg protein, and we add oil to it. We whisk it. This emulsification actually creates a different viscosity for the oil and for the egg yolk, and it makes a perfect sauce. When we go back one more time to the protein, I forgot the blood albumin. It's not very common here in America, but blood sausage is something you see in Polish, in Eastern European cuisine, and also a little bit in Asian cuisine. If you watch shows like Bizarre Foods, you will see these things. You can go to a grocery store and to a butcher store and see if they have blood sausage. It's a very, very good product and has a lot of iron, has a lot of minerals you can actually use in your diet. And it's not gross. It's actually tasting really nice. When you cut it, you sear it up even more if you want to, but it's fully cooked at that point. It's a very good item, and it actually uses the blood albumin to thicken the sausage. Okay, so we have the starch, the protein, and the fats. Let's talk a little bit about the ones which are gluten-free. I brought a couple in here. First of all, I have potato starch here. Potato starch, as you can see, it says here gluten-free. This is from Bob's Red Mill. This is one of the favorite companies I work with the product because you can actually see how the product looks like, color and so forth. This was, I think, like $5. It's going to take me for a long, long time. Now, potato starch, guys. Potato starch, important to remember, this is not potato flour. Potato starch will give you a translucent thickening agent. So this one is used just like a slurry, meaning cold water, a teaspoon of that potato starch, I mix it up, and I use it in my sauce. It is going to be clear. That means I can use it for a sauce like a brown sauce, a demi sauce, maybe a consomme, even if I want to thicken it up, to thicken up without changing the color. So this viscosity changes to maybe more like a heavy cream consistency without changing anything. Potato starch, though, because it's a starch, we need to boil to get that flavor out. All right. Another one is arrowroot. Now I have to be careful because we already opened this one. Arrowroot is also a fantastic thickening agent. And as it says here, starch flour, that means, again, we need to cook it. If we don't cook it, it will give us a off flavor, a floury, cakey flavor. Arrowroot is very fantastic for pastry chefs because arrowroot is one of those fantastic thickening agents you can reheat and refreeze, and it keeps the shape and the property of the sauce. So if you make a sauce and it's nice viscosity and you freeze it for maybe a month down the road, if you defrost it, it will have the same viscosity. Now, arrowroot is also gluten-free, which is very important for you to know if you are sensitive to gluten. And arrowroot is around for hundreds of years in culinary, but not in our cuisine, not in the Western cuisine, but in the Asian cuisine. So most Asian dishes you probably eat will have been thickened either with arrowroot or with tapioca flour. I don't have tapioca flour with me. Tapioca flour is derived of these little tapioca pearls. They grind them up, and the functionality is very much like arrowroot. It gives you though a little bit more of a cloudy look, so it's not clear. Arrowroot is clear. All right, the last one I have here, which is used a lot for salad dressings to actually enhance a natural emulsification. So when you remember, I just told you about that when we talked about the protein and the fats. A natural emulsification, natural is kind of funny because oil and water doesn't mix usually, so I need an emulsifier. Most of the time it's my egg yolk. So if I have egg yolks and I have oil and I mix it together and I use a little bit xanthan gum, and when I say a little bit, I literally mean a little bit. We're talking about 0.5% ratio. That means if I have 100 milliliter, I only need 5 milligrams of xanthan gum to make this more of a sauce. A little bit past the heavy cream consistency, but a really good salad dressing consistency. If I put up to 3%, that means of 100 milliliters, I'd put 3 milligrams in a liquid. That actually makes a solid gelatin, solid gelatin block. So that would solidify your salad dressing, so you don't want to do that. Xanthan gum, very nice, but also needs to be cooked. It's also gluten-free, which is fantastic for our gluten-free clients or for our students. So, one more time, we had xanthan gum, potato starch, and arrowroot as our gluten-free versions here. So these are more modern, well, I don't want to say modern age, but newer thickening agents you find now in the Western or in the classic French cuisine to work with. Again, don't forget that potato starch is not your potato flakes, okay? Your potato flakes are going to be dehydrated potatoes. They make something completely different. They make mashed potatoes. So if you go out and buy these, I, as a chef, would probably tell you to get arrowroot and xanthan gum before the potato starch because of the usage and just the simple fact it's a little bit easy to work with. All right. So a student before I was talking with was asking me about where these things come from. So tapioca is actually the root of the cassava plant. It is refined. Tapioca is very good for reheating and freezing as well. You probably know tapioca, most of these fantastic little drinks where there's little balls swimming around. These are actually tapioca pearls. They have been soaked most of the time in blueberry juice or something like that. They give like the really nice color off. Arrowroot, agar-agar is derived of the red algae, and agar-agar is 8 times as strong as any flour you can use for thickening. So agar-agar is also a fantastic thickening agent. And arrowroot is about twice as strong as flour. So we have a couple different thickening agent strengths here. So that's why it's very important that you read labels and that you try these things. All flours can be mixed with cold water and then added to your sauce and boiled, and you can actually see how thick they get by keeping boiling them. So that said, if you have good judgment, you can actually make a bowl up with the slurry with the cold water and your starch in it, regardless which one, cornstarch, arrowroot, xanthan gum, potato starch, whatever you want. And you add more, you whisk it, you boil it, add more, whisk and boil until you finally have the correct consistency, and then you stop. Now then you also don't want to reduce it, because when you reduce it, you're taking liquid away and the starch is going to get thicker. So we want to make sure that at that point, when it tastes good, when it has the right viscosity, you stop. Take it off the heat and you're done with it. You can strain it and so forth. So these were our thickening agents. Before I show you a little bit hands-on, I want to tell you two more things about alternatives to all your thickening products. One would be simply reducing. So if I have any liquid and I'm happy with the looks, especially with the texture, I can reduce. When you reduce, the sauce gets more thick. But also what happens is that the flavors are getting more concentrated. So we have to make that decision fairly early in the cooking process. Because if I have, let's say I have beef, I want to make a demi-glace by just reducing, and I have that stock and the brown sauce, and I mix it together, and it tastes already really salty at that point. Guess what? If I reduce it by 50%, it's going to be horrible, because it's going to be way too salty. So we have to be careful with how much we season things we're going to reduce. I hope that makes sense. And if you have any question about that, always call us first before you reduce something, so we can tell you and help you out with the flavor profiling. Reduction also is done for fruit and vegetable sauces, for baking pastry, especially with the fruit sauces, raspberry sauces, and strawberry sauces and so forth. We reduce, we maybe put some liquor in it, put some sugar in there. Don't forget, we take liquid out, it's going to get more concentrated, and in that way also the consistency of the strawberries and berries are going to be cooking apart, so you're going to have to puree them. And this leads me to the next one. So this was reducing, mainly done with clear liquids. Now I can also tell you about pureeing. So most of you students have made already the tomato sauce. And you have realized that with all the ingredients in that tomato sauce, before you puree it, it's kind of like soupy. And it's chunky. It looks a little bit like minestrone soup, right? And you're not quite sure what's going to happen. If you ladle that over pasta, you're going to have the soup draining out to the bottom, and you're going to have these clumps of vegetables sitting on top. Not very appealing. So what we tell you to do in the recipe is to take a stick blender and puree it, or you can also put it in a bar blender or into your VCM, your vertical color mixer, or your Roku. Be careful when it's hot. Don't put the lid on right away. Put a towel over it, because heat purees, you have steam coming up and it pops the lid, and you're going to have this all over the place. So you want to make sure that the lid is only loose, so you put a towel over it when you actually pulse it. Always pulse it, because it's usually hot, and we don't want you to get hurt. But what happens actually with the sauce itself? So if you have made that sauce, you're going to tell me now, well, chef, it's going to get more thick. It does, because I'm pureeing all these vegetables into small particles, and they are dispersed into the liquid, and they make actually a sauce thicker. Now, if that has not been done properly, you will actually still have water draining out of there. In that case, I will tell you, use a little bit xanthan gum to bind that liquid to the sauce and make the viscosity perfect. So, pureeing, think about maybe a black bean soup, split pea soups. Think about any fruit coulis you puree and they thicken themselves. Then we have reduction. Think about your demi-glace. Think about any stock you reduce smaller. Think about chicken stock you reduce for maybe a chicken noodle soup to intensify the flavor, to make it maybe a little bit more, thicker. Think about all your starches you have. We have gone through the vegetable gums, the pectins, so like the arrowroot, the xanthan gum, the potato starch, the all-purpose flours, and so forth. Think about proteins as a thickening agents: eggs, gelatin, blood albumin. And then last but not least, the fats with the butter, the oil, and the lard. So these are your thickening agents. I hope you will be experimenting with that. I want to show you two classical thickening agents now. One would be gluten-free, the one would be not. So I have here a bowl. and a whisk. I have some heavy cream, about maybe 2.5 ounces, and I have 1 egg yolk. And all I have to do is whisk this coat together, and you see how the cream already gets, almost looks like your vanilla cream on glaze for baking and pastry, right? That's very similar. Now the consistency got a little bit thicker, but this now I temper. That means I put the hot liquid in here a little bit. I'm gonna whisk it, and then I take that container and I put it into the pot with my soup maybe, and I mix that in. Key is that with this, you do not bring it to a temperature over 140 because the protein in the egg yolk will start curdling. Okay, and this is perfectly smooth right now. This is actually how you want your soup to look like, or your sauce. All right, so this would be a liaison. Liaison is egg yolk and cream, or egg yolk and half, or egg yolk and milk. That's up to you what you want to use. All of these work. Obviously, if you use heavy cream, it's fattier. If you want to do it a little bit more healthier, you may be going to go to a 2% milk or low-fat milk. Don't forget, you still have fat in the protein too, so if you really want to be nagging about fat, you might not want to use that liaison. But that is a classic thickening agent, and it works just like your creme anglaise, just like your vanilla sauce, and so forth. All right, the other one is just flour and butter. And I talked with a couple students before on the chat about roux. Now roux would be cooked, equal parts flour and butter cooked together. And I didn't want to cook, I'm lazy, and actually one of the students correctly said, well, chef, that's beurre Manier, that's called the lazy chef's roux, and actually it is. It was perfectly true with that one. So I'm going to have a bowl here. I'm going to add the same amount of butter and flour in a mixing bowl. And all I have to do is work it with my hands. Now, the temperature of my hands is warm enough to create heat so that the butter is gonna get softer and mix as well with the flour. You can also do this directly on the cutting board. You can do that on a mixer, in a mixer, sorry, on a mixer. Don't do it on the mixer. Those funny Austrians, I still have problem with English here. So, now it's not cooked. And what we can do is, it looks almost like a dough ball, right? What we can do with this is now we can wrap it into a plastic wrap. Or some chefs, they actually leave it on the counter, just like this. And they literally take a spoonful and put this in the sauce. Bam! And they mix it up, they bring it to a boil and see if it's enough, and they add more if they have to. So beurre Manier, equal parts fat and flour work together cold, well, or almost cold with your hands or a cook spoon or maybe a mixer, depending how much you make. Or the roux, equal parts fat and flour cooked together. Again, does not matter which kind of starch you use. All-purpose flour, bread flour. The thickening components is a little bit different, but not very much. Most chefs use chef flour, which is all-purpose flour. Other than that, try some of the alternatives. Play around, especially with the gluten-free options, so you can actually keep your sauces and your soups gluten-free for your clients and for yourself. And if you have any questions, please feel free to call us or email us at any time, and we will gladly to answer any questions. And thank you so much for watching our Thickening Agent session. Thank you.